Hello, everyone. How are you? Focus.
There you go.
Yay!
The world was blurry and now it is clear.
Only to everybody else. To me, it's still just as blurry as it ever was.
Okay, Russ, let's start the cavalcade of pre-show.
All right, let's start out with something that we knew was coming, and I had a feeling it was going to be dumb, and it's really dumb with a capital B, and that's IHOP turning into the International House of Burgers. Now, this doesn't mean that they won't do pancakes anymore, but it does mean that all of a sudden they're trying to change their business because clearly pancakes just isn't working for them. And here's my answer to IHOP. For one thing, for people who don't eat meat, are you cooking the burgers and pancakes on the same grill? Because if you are, I would never eat there again anyhow. But getting past that little detail, which, maybe they have their own burger grill.
I think every ham pancake you've ever had has been cooked on a grill that's probably cooked bacon too. So I think you're probably lost in that one.
It depends, probably. But usually, guys do try and keep it in some sort of uniformity when they can. But here's they do clean it. They do.
Yeah.
But if they're getting so many burgers at the same time, my sense is there's going to be chaos. But my whole thing is, you've built this reputation on breakfast. Why not just continue to try and make breakfast better? There are so many. If you look at here's where I think they've lost it, right? Some bean counter looked at a market report and said, look how many hamburgers get eaten in the U.S. every day. And that is true. But the issue is
only there were a place to get hamburgers in the U.S.
But the people go to specific places for hamburgers. They do. Everybody's got their own hamburger joint or cheeseburger joint. They do. Now, if you look at every fast food place, what have they all added in the last year? Breakfast. If they didn't have it, they added it. Taco Bell, everybody. Why? Because everybody eats some sort of breakfast, and if you do it right, you'll get a lot of people. I think IHOP's doing it wrong.
Well, this is the weird thing. Everybody is adding breakfast except McDonald's, who is making their breakfast available 24 hours a day. So I really want an Egg McMuffin at 10:30 at night.
It's a smart move by them, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but this is the problem, Mac. The problem is if you go there and order, and I never have because I don't like Egg McMuffins. But if you go there and you order an Egg McMuffin at 10:30, you're probably getting it after midnight because it takes them that long to do it when they're not regularly doing breakfast stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's going to take you another couple seconds for sure. But I mean, this is my wife won't go to McDonald's for anything but Egg McMuffins. So it's that's the only thing she'll eat there. She was thrilled when this was. I mean, we don't. It's funny. As a kid, we definitely went to McDonald's.
Here we go. DB backs me up. Egg sales are up 600% in Canada, and they're going to burgers. What a bunch of maroons. Bugs Bunny. I stole that from Bugs Bunny.
That's absolutely true.
Okay, and the other thing you wanted to bring up, Ross?
So Shohei Ohtani, is the Japanese sensation who came over and had decided that he wasn't signing with the team unless he could pitch and play the field or hit or do something else, right? Because he's great at both. He did show for a very short time that he is great at both. But now he's landed on the DL, and it looks like he's going to have to get Tommy John surgery. Now, people are telling me, well, it was a tear anyhow. How could you say that the hitting or the pitching did it? And it's like, I just looked up the numbers, and he hit in 30 games, and he pitched 9. If he didn't hit at all, I bet you he would have gotten through this season without tearing his UCL, because 30 games getting up 4 times a game is a lot to add when you're also pitching and you're throwing in between days. It was too much to ask of any human. I don't care that Babe Ruth did it. The people that brought up the Babe Ruth comparisons, Ruth didn't do it at the same time. He pitched and then he went into the field because he was such a good hitter. They couldn't keep him on the bench anymore. That was the reason for Babe Ruth.
Yeah, he only played the outfield and pitched. I think it was like a span of 2 years, and or like the last couple years with the Red Sox. But this is the thing, and it's partially his fault because he went to the Angels specifically because they would let him do what he wanted to do. He wanted to pitch as a starter, and he wanted to hit as a DH or an outfielder. And other teams are like, well, either one or the other, or we can use it as a relief pitcher or whatever. There was always conditions, and the Angels said, no, we'll let you do what you want to do. And that now he's probably not going to be available if he has the surgery until the beginning of the 2020 season. So
somebody did ask me a question. They're like, well, who do you blame? Are you blaming the GM? Are you blaming the manager? No, I'm blaming the doctor that rubber stamped this and thought this was a good idea. Like, you already knew the guy had a tear, right? So to me, I would never have pitched him. You could have wore a brace. And
they already knew he had a tear before this?
That's what people are saying, that was part of the deal.
So that's just like Tanaka. Tanaka is okay. That's ridiculous.
And to me, it's just silly. It's like, if you knew that, then you could have just hit him and put on a brace, and I guarantee you he would have gotten through the season. But he probably wasn't going to have a long career without the injury. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I thought we were going to talk about net neutrality here. I was like,
well, no, that was the last one. Like I said, we had a plethora of stuff. So, but well, give us your feelings on that, because I'm a little.
Net neutrality is a very confusing issue, obviously.
Well, the thing that confused me was that it got put down in the Senate. The vote, the recent vote. There were a couple of Republicans crossed the aisle with the Democrats and voted the changes down. So I thought that was it, but apparently there's an end around here.
So here's what happened. So even though they voted it down in the Senate, it still had to go to the House. I think the House is actually voting on it today, but the FCC just pushed it through based on the date that it had for the law that they wrote up, right? And so they're trying to strong arm it through regardless of what vote happens in the House. And again, it's really funny because if you read the guy who's in charge of the FCC, who used to work for AT&T, by the way, I think that's important to note, because AT&T is the one company who really could make the most out of this if they get the Time Warner merger. That hurts consumers, because the minute if you have DirecTV or Time Warner Cable, if they merge, they'll just raise your prices. Like, that's it. You won't have more options. You'll be paying higher prices. Now, the other thing is, for the actual net neutrality as a whole, we talk about the throttling and everything, and I guarantee you in a week or two, you will start to see a difference, because now they have been green-lighted, but not in every state. New Jersey, California, Oregon, there's states that are fighting this, and that's what I'm basically trying to tell people is, call Congress, call your senators, call everybody from your state, and tell them that you are against this. If you like it and want to pay higher prices and have a slower internet, go ahead. But if you're against this, call your state, because your state might make a difference and say, we're not going to let ISPs do this, because they can't control the ISPs. I don't think the government will ever be able to control the internet. They might think they can, but I don't think they can.
No, you can't control the internet. And the thing about it is it's sort of an inevitable thing, unfortunately. Like, it's one of those things you really hope that, I mean, there is still motion in Congress that could actually help it. There is still I was reading about it. I'll read you what I read. It faces steep odds and especially once it reaches the president's desks. But gives voters a chance to force legislation to take sides on what's still deeply on the still deeply unpopular proposal. If you support net neutrality and your representative doesn't, you can vote them out in November and, of course, replace them with someone else who does. That's going to be. I mean, this is another example.
That's a slower process.
Process. This, the one saving grace on this is, I think that, and I really hate this. It's really bad for us. It's bad for the internet. It's bad for anybody who's who's made a living on the internet, because it potentially could stop companies like mine or yours or Russ's or anybody's like from getting going in the future. This is the real tough thing. Is it's going to make it harder to start, I think, because of the way they're going to try to limit, and I think it's limit what websites what websites get access to, things like that. There's certain things, and especially how fast you can get on a website, which is really what the ISPs can control. So Google. Yeah,
because let's face it. I mean, as a website owner, and you look at this too. If somebody can't get on your website, they're off and they're not coming back.
You spend a lot of money optimizing it so it's quick, and because even a split second, especially when we go into we spend a heck of a lot of money going into the next couple of weeks here with with the draft and UFA Day and everything that's happening here, to make sure that you don't get a little spinning wheel or anything like that. And even in this day and age, that's really tough to do, because if everyone's hitting your website at the same time, it's very, very hard. So, we every year have to spend more money and more money to make that happen. So what
I saw, Eck, and you could back me up if you've seen this, I've seen in reports that basically 75% of people in the United States want to keep it the way it was. Yeah. And so they're pushing this through against the will of the people, ultimately.
No, they are. And what this really is a battle between, honestly, is companies like Google and Amazon and the ISPs. That's really what it comes down to, because those are the ones who, Google, the ISPs will say Google gets all of this hard work we put in for free. Like they get people go to Google every second of every day, and they get it for free. So they want to charge, they're gonna try to charge Google, they're gonna try to charge Amazon, they're gonna try to charge Netflix more to do this, or they're gonna make deals with them, and so that they get the fastest internet out there. If we go to Google, if you go to there's a lot going on here, but we'll definitely. I think it is important that you do some research on it. It's a very complicated issue. There's a lot of differing opinions on it, and I think the most important thing is to really just educate yourself about it.
I will say this last thing, and then we'll go to hockey. If you're a cord cutter, beware, because I think they're also going to attack the cord cutters.
That is true, and there's more. There are parts of this bill that enable them to actually tell if you're a cord cutter.
Right.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist. If you're ordering through, say, Spectrum or whoever, and you're getting no TV package, but you're getting high-speed internet, you're a cord cutter, because you need the high-speed internet to be able to cord cut.
Right. And and most companies are still they're putting in the really low. It reminds me so much of the newspaper industry, like the cable industry reminds me so much of the newspaper industry right now. It's just you. Like if you subscribe to the New York Times online, they send you a paper automatically,
right.
Which is like what they're doing basically. If you're getting the internet, you're getting cable automatically, because that keeps the numbers up, and it keeps the advertising money in the newspaper. The New York Times people can say, "Oh, we're the actual hard copy goes to millions of people."
Right.
That's what's happening. That's what's happening with cable TV too. So yeah, there's a lot of issues. It's definitely. This is not so much a Republican Democratic thing all the time. This is more of a growing pain of the internet to try to figure out. And we've had it really good for a long time. And it's one of those things you look at, you're like, maybe it won't be that good forever, but hopefully enough people will try to help keep it this way for a long time. Anyway, let's go to hockey.
Okay.
Very important to keep an eye on everything for sure. Let's do this. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, June 11th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello, and I love Canada.
I'm Russ Cohen, and go Canada. You're my friend.
I'm Eklund. I'm not touching this one today. But, yeah. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to Canada and America equally. Because we do. It's my favorite country in the world, Canada. I love it absolutely. It's a great place to go and visit. And anyway, we'll just say that some of the things that have been happening lately are very unfair to you guys, and that's my opinion at least. And of course, about 500 people on my thread yesterday had their own opinions. So we'll see.
Of course.
Yes. I just got pissed off by something I saw.
Well,
okay, we're going to really try to avoid this as best as possible.
Yeah.
Move on to the rumors, okay? Let's start with Tyler Johnson today for a second, because he was the last thing I talked about. And we are less than 2 weeks from the draft, and we are less than 3 weeks from UFA Day. And between the draft and UFA Day, you get the 5 days of happiness where people get to travel around and visit teams.
It's Christmas in June and July.
It is. The funniest thing is this time of year is when someone comes up to me and says, oh, your job must be getting easier. The finals are over, and I just sit back and I say, actually, it's just starting. My job is just beginning, and that's what's the fun thing about it. So yeah, it is Christmas in July, and we've got a lot of, and I think it's going to be Christmas in August too. We're going to have a long year this year of trade rumors. There's so much to get done, and there are so many teams involved. So Tyler Johnson is an interesting one, because I really have not been on the bandwagon of Tyler Johnson being traded. I do think he's an important player to that team. I think that team is doing I mean, look, like we said, Vegas already has them as the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. This team's in good shape. So why would you move Tyler Johnson? Why would you do that in the first place? However, his name's coming up, which makes me think, and this is the important thing about this time of year to remember, is that everything is a clue. And you wonder what's going on. So why is Tampa even entertaining the idea of moving Tyler Johnson? And it's got to be to make cap space. It's got to be because they've got something else going on. And that the question is, what could Tampa have going on? And it really sounds as if, to me, I'm talking to people, that they are interested in adding to their defense. And even though their defense, even though they just added a defenseman at the draft, let my dog outside. I'll be right back, but I'll let you guys talk for a second, and I'll be right back.
Well, I do think they're going to try and strengthen defense, although I felt like if they played Slater Cuckoo more and Dacha more, it would. I think they're probably seeing the aging process with Braden Coburn. That's been on display. Girardi had a good year. I've got nothing bad to say about Dan Girardi, and Ryan McDonough was fine. Ryan McDonough, when he's healthy especially, is really great. So, but they could use another defenseman. There's no doubt. Yeah,
they could, but I actually am going a different direction here. If they're trading Tyler Johnson, first of all, he's just entering. I think this year is year one of a 7-year, $35 million extension. So that's $5 million per. He's 27 years old, so he's not over the hill. Obviously, he's in the middle of his prime. Two things I draw from this, if this is realistic. One, he's a John Cooper, he's a favorite of Cooper.
Right.
Cooper was forced to, let go his assistant coaches. That was similar to what happened with Randy Carlyle in Toronto. The year before Cooper got fired, or the year before Carlyle got fired, he lost his assistants. I think Cooper may be in a tenuous state here, and if they're trading one of his favorites in Johnson, then I think that's another sign of it. The other thing is, I don't think they would be moving Johnson to create room to add a defenseman. I think they would be moving Johnson because the center market is desperate and they can get a good return for him, and they could be clearing cap space to make a run at John Tavares.
Well, but they also have to sign Kucherov long-term at some point too.
Right.
Or not. And the thing is, if they're making room for John Tavares, then they're not going to re-sign Kucherov long-term.
Right.
Yeah.
And Russ, like you
said, we saw he down these playoffs. So yeah, it's
like you said at the end of that series. Do you really want to pay him, what Stamkos is making? I would assume Kucherov is going to ask for at least the equal of what Stamkos is making, which is $8.5 million state tax free. I don't know whether that personally, if I was them, I would sign Kucherov because I think Kucherov is a good player, but you can't dispute the inconsistency at times.
No, you really can't. And I do think that there was a little bit of a feeling that both Kucherov and Stamkos were a little one-dimensional in the playoffs, and I got that from a couple people. It's hard to say what that really means.
I thought more in the case of Kucherov with Stamkos, everything with me was tied to the fact that he was injured coming into the playoffs.
Right.
But he said at the end of the playoffs that the injury was not going to need surgery and that he was getting better as time was going along. So in a way, he threw himself under the bus by saying I was fine, but maybe he just didn't want to offer excuses, unlike unlike certain players in a different sport.
Yeah, he'll never make excuses. He won't say that, I had a broken bone and then I didn't play well. He won't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I wonder if people know what we're talking about.
I think they know.
So far, the teams I've heard involved with this, with Tyler Johnson are, a little bit what I'd expect, but not as much. It's funny, kind of interesting. Like, so on the room, if you go to the rumor chart for a second and see, you'll the interesting thing to me, I expected a little bit more from the Western Conference with him, but right now you've got Montreal, the Islanders, and Carolina. Montreal makes a ton of sense, right? Because they need a center really badly.
Yeah, but if we're talking them trading Johnson and getting a defenseman back, then Montreal doesn't make sense because Montreal really doesn't have a defenseman other than maybe Carl Alzner that would be an equal in a deal like that.
And I think that move if he was Alzner, but because Alzner didn't have the greatest years.
No, he didn't. And we know the situation with the Canadiens in terms of their depth up the middle. They have none. Russ and I were talking earlier about their third pick overall, and how they apparently like a kid named Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who's a center, but he's ranked not as high as third overall, and if they may reach, or if this is all smokescreen or whatever. We know, they have two guys in Alex Galchenyuk and Jonathan Drouin, who are wingers, who they've put in this position of playing center when they're not centers. So, I think they need a legitimate center. Johnson is that, but he's not a number one. I think he's a number two at best.
Yeah, he's a number two.
Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
And he's smaller too, which a lot of people are talking about. Because has this history of being a smaller team right now. I don't think that matters as much to them. Tyler Johnson is a really talented, fast player.
I don't think it's a size issue.
I know that when they picked up Drouin from Tampa, I know for a fact that they had discussed Tyler Johnson as well. So I'm not shocked by that. The Islanders is an interesting one. And Carolina, who is going to be probably the hardest team to call this year because of everything that's going on, because everybody's available, but not everybody's going to be taken from that team. And also, what are they really trying to do? They're definitely looking for centers, but every team's looking for centers. So that's like, when you look at the end of the day, that's kind of a.
Well, one further thing about Tampa, then we can move on to someone else. You have to factor in also in terms of what they're going to do going forward. Ryan Callahan is having another major surgery this summer. Yeah. I think it was a shoulder, Ross. I'm not 100%
sure.
I think it is too. But he's got 2 years left in his contract, this year and next year, at $5.8 million. And more than likely, he's going to start the season on LTIR and probably come in later on. But that's a situation where, you don't know whether he's going to play out the last year of that contract with all the injuries that he's had. So that's almost $6 million in cap space. Yeah. And if you're trading Johnson and not taking anything back, that's a total of $11 million. That's enough to sign Kucherov, or if you want to go
good in the room.
What's that?
But he's good in the room, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not disputing that.
I know it's crazy.
No, but
and the Rangers fell into that trap for a while too, because he is such a great guy, but he doesn't stay healthy. Now Tampa's fallen into that. Like, they feel like he is one of their leaders and they need him. And look, when he's playing, he's very effective. He had a good run. He got injured again. They're not gonna get rid of him though. They won't.
No, it doesn't sound like they are. And it becomes like almost like he seems like he's more valuable to them than anybody else, situation. Yeah. And that's what it felt like.
That was with the Rangers too, until they got rid of him.
It was, but then the Rangers the Rangers moved him for a legitimate player. Like that was Marty St. Louis deal. So that was a real thing.
And they have and Russ can attest to this. They have a lot of really good young prospects. Matthew Pekka and Taylor Radish. They got young guys.
They've got guys. They don't have a number one center though. Like most teams. In the minors, they do not have a number one center. Braden Point's not a number one center. Like, that's the thing. A lot of teams don't have that, and it's just the way it is. You just that's a guy after next year who's an RFA. There's a guy they might be clearing space. That might be why they're trading Tyler Johnson, because they have to clear space to sign Braden Point to an extension.
Right, there's another one, right? So, and the next name I wanted to bring up was Alex Galchenyuk, who has been rumored for years, and I just hope for his sake that he gets traded this summer. And it really sounds like
he's toiling there. It's a shame.
Yeah, it's just gone on and on and on, and they've never really committed to him. It's just like they never sit there and they say we are going. And that's what. If I'm Montreal, I'm either committing to him and saying we are behind you, or we're moving you. Like what they've done with him has been very wishy-washy at best.
Well, that's what happens when he scores 30 goals. You say, okay, we've got ourselves a player, but they clearly drafted him. They clearly developed him with the mindset that this guy is going to be a center. And when two coaches, and granted, Michel Therrien isn't exactly the most player-friendly of coaches, but when you have two coaches in Michel Therrien and Claude Julien who decide this guy is not good enough defensively to play up the middle, and Claude Julien came to that conclusion after, I think, 2 games then he's not good enough to play. You got one who's a Stanley Cup winner, another one who's been a longtime NHL coach. They both say he can't play center. So if the organization thinks that he's a center and the coaches don't, then they need to move on from him and either get a center in a trade or just start from anew.
Yeah, I mean, the guy can play, but this is the shame of the Montreal Canadiens because they have like two players that they forced into positions that, it's just not going to work out for them at the NHL level. They'd be better both being wingers. And because of need, they're throwing them in there, and it's just not good for their careers. It's not good for their numbers. It's just they do need to do something about this. I mean, and Drouin had a pretty good year too, but still, how much better would he be away from that situation?
I like the team that I'm hearing mostly with Galchenyuk is the Blues, and I think the St. Louis Blues make a lot of sense with him. I think that's a team that they need to do something. The Blues need to. I mean, obviously they need to fix their goaltending, but that's
the thing. If they don't fix their goaltending, I don't think anything else matters.
Yeah, it probably doesn't, but at the same time, that's how they're going to fix their goaltending. I've heard them mentioned about them going after Grubauer. Everybody seems to think that Grubauer is available.
Everybody's getting Grubauer. I heard someone say the Flyers are getting Grubauer. Like the whole world's getting Grubauer.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy. Ben.
Only one team can get Grubauer.
Caps are going to get a serious return for him. I mean, they are and it's a fascinating thing when you think about it because.
Well, here's the thing: they might get a serious return, or they might get nothing because if the whole league decides, you know what. None of this has really worked out getting some of these guys who aren't proven as a one on the free agent market. That market could dry up quickly. We've seen it dry up in other ways in other sports too. In baseball, the free agent market dried up 100% this past summer, and I could see it drying up for goalies too that aren't the proven guys.
Well, here's an interesting and again, right now rumors are running rampant regarding a number of players, and one of the guys that had a bad first year was Scott Darling. There was a report coming out of the Athletic in Chicago regarding the Blackhawks being interested in getting Darling back.
I'll tell you something about that, Mike. Not to interrupt you. That was a deal that Carolina could have made at the trade deadline and didn't. And I know this for a fact. That's a deal, and there was a lot. And I think of that not making that deal at the trade deadline was a lot of played into big time what happened with Francis. Like that, I was told that they really wanted to move Darling back to Chicago.
Right.
But the fact that Francis didn't do it, that would not surprise me at all. That Chicago does still have faith in him, and they think that they could fix him if they got back there. But he really.
Yeah, I mean, from what it sounds like, this deal could be bigger than just Darling going back to Chicago. There's a Justin Falk aspect to it. There's Carolina getting the LTIR of Marian Hossa in the deal. There's a first round. I mean, it seems to be bigger than just simply Carolina retaining salary on Darling and sending him back to Chicago where they have faith in him.
This reminds me of Eck, and then I'll let you tell us the real deal. Yeah. In my gut, this is reminding me of how the Quebec Nordiques used to act in the offseason when they used to think we have to make this sort of massive trade to really get better because we're good, but we're not great. And these are the deals that I'm afraid of for an organization like Carolina. Literally, all this team needs is a goalie and maybe one roster difference, and they could be a playoff team, and they are going to change way more than that.
No, I mean, I don't think they see it that way.
I know that.
Or at least Dundon doesn't see that
way. They see it as massive. I mean, and I'm with you 100%. I mean, to me, when you're looking at, and I remember just this time last year talking to people, and they were saying things like, man, that Metro division, that's going to be a hard division. That like Carolina's coming up, New Jersey's going to get better eventually, but New Jersey's not there yet. But Carolina, they're for real. The Islanders are for real. That was what you were hearing, a year ago.
Yes,
but the problem, and Eck, this has been the problem for 3 years with the Hurricanes. They're loaded ridiculously on defense. They're weak up the middle, and they can't score. They couldn't score enough, and they didn't solve their goaltending problem by signing Scott Darling. So they never. And that the one negative thing about Francis, I think he built a good organization. I think he's a good man, but I think they never were fully able to address their areas that they needed to address to get to that next level. And now I think I agree with you guys. I think Dundon is going in a direction where he's going like you need to plug a few holes, and he's gonna put a torpedo in the side of the boat.
That's what I'm afraid of.
And then and for the rest of the league, they're rubbing their hands with glee because the prospect of getting Noah Hannafin and Justin Falk and maybe somebody else out of that organization, they're dancing around the fire while the Hurricanes are burning.
Yeah, let me throw another couple of things at you guys. Also, but do be careful about the Carolina-Chicago connection, which everybody always, they made a lot of trades with each other. That had a lot to do with Francis's
yes,
relationship with Chicago. I also feel like they've been screwed by Chicago a lot. So Carolina does feel that way.
I think Dundon already came out and said that, didn't he?
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. So they're going to be really hesitant to trade with Chicago.
I mean, the Marcus Kruger thing maybe, but I mean, I don't think getting.
I mean, they feel as if Francis was told things by certain people in Chicago that weren't true about certain players, and I can't get into more than that. But there's definitely now. I mean, that's Darling. Okay, they would move Darling back there. I think that's one. But as far as this expanding into a bigger deal, I hesitate on that one because. Yeah. I think that I don't think they're going to be really gun shy with Chicago. They do not. Those two teams do not trust each other right now.
Well, if there is any perceived interest in Justin Falk on the part of the Blackhawks, that just tells you that the trade of Yarmulson last year at the draft, how much that hurt them, because it was always that big three. It was always Seabrook, Keith, and Yarmulson, and now they realize they don't have a number three, and Keith and Seabrook are getting older, and they need somebody to sort of step in and be the bridge. And maybe Falk would be because he's only 26, but the Chicago is as desperate for change as Carolina is.
Yeah. Yarmulson's a good name too to talk about just briefly because I haven't updated this yet, but I will be updating this later. Lou likes him apparently a lot. Lamorello.
Mm-hmm. So I figured if you say Lou, we know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's it.
We're not thinking Lou Nanny.
I guess all I have to say is Lou
Costello.
But he does like him. I knew he liked him, and we talked about last year about him maybe going to Toronto. This makes, he does make some sense. The belief on the island that they really have like one defenseman right now, because. In Letty, and DeHaan's going to be gone,
he is gone. He's gone.
Boychuk has lost a lot of steps.
Yeah, fading quick.
They have Pulock, they have Mayfield.
What was that?
Mayfield's a bottom pairing guy. Pulock, unfortunately, is a bottom pairing guy because they don't trust him defensively, and we don't know what he'll ever be defensively. So he's going to be bottom pairing power play guy. So what X's saying is true. The way they look at it.
Yeah, Lou does. Remember, Lou builds out right from the goalie out. Yes. So he's got a really solid set of forwards there. He's going to move one of them, I think, to get. Yeah. He might have no choice with Tavares, but he's going to have to. I think that he's going to move somebody else to get something done there. And I think Jarmelsson's a kind of that's a very Lamorello type move. I would say it's not surprising the rumor keeps coming up with him and tied together.
Yeah, the only thing I'm skeptical of is the fact that Yarmulson's only under contract for a year. If they'd make a deal for him, that obviously I think it would be in concert with an extension because you're not going to trade assets for a guy who's a free agent.
We trade for him either. I don't think it's going to be that crazy of a deal. I think he had an okay season.
You know what though?
He was injured.
Here's the thing: Chaika is going to be looking for a return on this because so far this deal has not worked out for them. And I dare say it's been horrible for them.
Yeah, no, that's true. He's going to look for something. Lou has a lot of picks. He could do something with that. There's different. Arizona really should be looking to get better now. They really shouldn't try to.
If Lou told Tavares, "Hey, we've got a goalie, and this is who we're going to get, and we're going to get Yarmulson on the day of the draft," it could change things.
Yeah, it could. So speaking of Tavares, let's go there for a second. The first rumor I've heard, and I wrote it yesterday, the first rumor I heard that Tavares is actually planning on visiting a team in those 5-day periods, which is like usually that doesn't mean much. I mean, Stamkos visited with teams last year, but it does. It is going to happen. It doesn't like it's going to happen. And the first team that came up was Vancouver. That in a rumor that he was going to visit with the Canucks. I don't know if that means the Canucks are going to visit with him technically, which I think is probably more likely. Him flying to Vancouver, I bet you Vancouver would send somebody to visit him.
The thing is it sort of goes counter to everything that's out there regarding what Tavares is looking for. And the main consideration is he wants to win. And if you want to win, I would say Vancouver is low down on your, at least for the near future. I mean, they have good young players. They have a good young goaltender in Demko, but I think they're 2 or 3 years away from being a contender unless they stupidly do what they've done the last few years and throw money at the problem when they're not ready to contend.
Well, okay, so Mike, this is a two-pronger. You can make an argument by next year Demko will be ready because he's going to get a full year in the league this year.
Agreed.
And you also can make the argument that they are going to spend a boatload of money because they have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yes. I mean,
they lost the Sedins. Do you really think they're going to just save that cap space?
No, I'm not saying save the cap. I'm not saying save.
The question is not whether Tavares will go there; it's whether they want Tavares, right? Because I mean the other way around. It's whether.
Yeah, no. I think the question is whether Tavares will go there, and if he wants to win immediately, that's a no.
But they'll spend the money, and with him, with some good young players they have. I don't know. I mean, Tavares, who knows? He could be convinced into that. That team is not it's not like he's signing so out there. This is a team that definitely is on the rise. They are, they might, without Tavares, they're a bubble playoff team this year. With Tavares,
no. See, that's where I disagree. They're not a bubble playoff team without Tavares. They are right now. They are in the, I'd say, 23rd, 24th, 25th place. Bo Horvath is their number one center. They're without their two best. I mean, even though they were aging, two of their better players. They have a great young player in Besser. They have Pettersson is probably not going to play for them at least at the beginning of the year unless they're going to rush him along. They've got some good defensemen, but not great. And their goaltending, their goalie maybe. I mean, you can't consider him as a solid number one because he's young. He's 21 years old, or 22, I think. So no, they're right now at a rebuild stage, and that's what I'm saying. If they throw money at veterans to basically plug holes and put a false sense of hope into the Vancouver fan base, they're doing a disservice to the organization. They should just continue to slowly build, and I think in a couple years they're going to be a really good team. But if they jump forward too much and try to throw money at the problem, it's going to be the same thing that they've done with Louis Eriksson and other signings, which are stupid.
I don't know. I agree with that to a degree, but I also think that the Sedin's loss is obviously huge. They're two great players, but they are two players who take up a lot of ice time too. They're also players who play every first power play, everything. And there's a lot of guys on that team. I want to see what they do with more ice time. I'm not convinced that this team is far away. I mean, I was not a Canucks fan going into last year, but I was sort of won over by watching some of their games, and some of their younger players impressed me. So we'll see that.
I mean, there are pieces there. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to tell where they're gonna fall right now because they are gonna do something with this money. They're not gonna sit there and. I mean, they could get John Carlson and Tavares for all we know. I mean, they have.
Right, and that's the thing. I think if John Tavares has interest in them, Mike, you could say whatever you want. Fans, you could say whatever you want about this slow rebuild. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, if they throw $12 million a year at Tavares, then the rebuild is over with. It would be like the Leafs trading for Phil Kessel in 2008.
Right.
Forget the rebuild. You just traded 2 first-round picks for a young guy, a young forward. Forget the rebuild. It's over with.
Yep.
I think it'd be stupid, but that they may do it.
So Rasmus for Noah. That's another thing I put on my blog today. That keeps coming up. Now, this would be Ristolainen for Noah Hannafin. Not saying it would be directly straight up for that, but it is something that I've heard a couple times over the weekend and again this morning. Yeah. So I think that, I mean, there's a lot behind this. Obviously, is the fact that I've heard Aho is a big Ristolainen fan. I've also heard, obviously we know that Hanifin and Eichel are best of friends, right? So that's and that doesn't mean anything necessarily in the NHL, but it doesn't hurt the deal. Right?
Well, this is where I'm skeptical of this for one reason. The reason that the Hurricanes may want to trade Noah Hanifin is because he's an RFA and he's going to ask for similar money to what Slavin was signed for, which was over $5 million, and more than what Pesce was signed for, which is around a little over $4 million. Ristolainen's making $5.4 million. That defeats the purpose. I mean, better.
I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, if they think he's better,
here's the thing. Is he better?
No.
Better in a different way. He's more offensive than Hanifin, and Hanifin's the better defender. That's really the difference here. And actually, to be honest, if I'm putting them side by side, I would rather have Hanifin because he already has some offense in his game. I probably could bring out a little more, but I don't know if I could teach Ristolainen to be that much better defensively than he already is. Yeah,
Ristolainen is pretty much – I'm not saying he's a finished product, but he's pretty much – he is what he is. I mean, and the thing is, I mean, I don't doubt that
the – bad. I'm not trying to say either.
Right. I like Ristolainen. I think I don't think he's a number one defenseman. I think he might be a 2 or 3, but I think he's a good defenseman. But I do agree with one thing with this rumor act. I think if the Sabres trade Ristolainen, they're going to look for a defenseman in return. But I think that rumored deal from a month or so ago regarding Klefbom and Ristolainen makes more sense because Klefbom makes less and Edmonton is soured on him and Edmonton thinks that Ristolainen is an upgrade. Whereas I think Carolina for Hanifin is looking for forward help or help in goal and maybe even additional draft picks. And I don't think they're looking for a one-on-one trade or maybe a bigger deal. It doesn't solve their problems. Now the thing is, if that's what Don Waddell wants to do, then Don Waddell is going to do it. But I don't think it solves that.
Right, and Mike makes a great point. If you are going to trade Noah Hanifin, you do need to get offense, especially if you plan to trade Jeff Skinner, because again, that's the other part of this two-pronged situation. That if you're going to move Jeff Skinner out, and you're just going defenseman for defenseman, you haven't improved your team offensively, except, yes, you'll get a few more points at a Ristolainen, but is that going to put you over the top? No, it's not going to put you over the top.
I mean, do they think that they're trading Skinner and they're going to get whatever? Apparently they want to get a first-round pick and something for Skinner, and he's got 1 year left in his contract. Do they think that they're going to trade Skinner and then Svechnikov is going to step in as an 18-year-old and replace the offense that you lose with Skinner?
I mean, I think there's going to be some hope for that, Mike. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to put on a kid, and Svechnikov has a boatload of talent. Unfortunately, I think they are going to do that.
I'm kind of amazed at how few teams I've been able to get any interest on Skinner. Like that's so I'm a little bit. I mean, maybe
they're worried about the concussions, but he still puts up points.
Yeah, I think they're worried about the concussions. They're worried about the size. The thing is, how much more does he have to prove? It's like he's been.
No, I'm with you. I've always been a Skinner. I've liked Skinner. I've always liked Skinner, and I think I'm baffled by it. That's why I say I think I know the contract, 1 year left is a bad thing, especially for what they're asking for him. But I haven't even put him on the rumor chart yet because I'm not buying that he's going to be moved at all. Like I just based on where.
I'm buying it because it's been out there for so long. Eventually, it's got to be true.
But understand, Carolina's put everybody out there. They made it clear as day, right? So, of course, Skinner's going to be talked about. Where Hanifin, I really feel like they've talked to teams about. I don't get the sense that I don't get that same sense with Skinner, or at least, I mean, gone into depth with teams. Like they've sure people have called about Skinner, but I don't think that anybody. I think people have been scared away right away. From what I've been told, at least they've said, okay, we're not good. Where Hanifin, they seem to be getting to that like next level of talking. I don't get that with Skinner at all.
Well, I have to bring this up because I saw it in yesterday's Buffalo News. Mike Harrington wrote a piece regarding, the rumors of Ryan O'Reilly being on the market, and essentially came to like where what we've been talking about is, first of all, be very cautious about trading O'Reilly because O'Reilly's the number 2. You don't know whether Middlestead is ready to play center right now. I mean, O'Reilly's making a ton of money, but he's expressed some frustration, but really I think he's still part of the equation. And and he cited the Ristolainen problem and the rumors of being able to get a guy like Klefbom in a deal for him, and maybe it would be more beneficial if they could get that kind of return to move Ristolainen rather than move O'Reilly, because centers are not growing on trees right now.
But O'Reilly, again, does not have as much value as people are playing it. Like, I mean, there is a huge spin machine coming out of Buffalo about O'Reilly's value. I will tell you that. Like, I get a lot of people who want me to believe that Ryan O'Reilly is valuable, and then I talk to other teams about it, and I get a very different opinion on that. Like, I get that he is the second center on a terrible team.
There's a caveat here, Ak. He's not as valuable at $7.5 million.
Right.
If the Sabres retain salary, all of a sudden he's valuable.
Well,
if he's a $5 million player, similar to what happened with Derek Brassard.
Okay, so let's play a game. In 2010, Jeff Skinner was drafted.
Okay,
he has 204 career goals. Tell me who from that draft has more goals. Does Taylor Hall have more goals?
I would say yeah.
No.
No, he doesn't. Wow.
He's not. Does Tyler Seguin have more goals?
Yes.
But not by a lot. He has 25 more goals. And that's because Skinner has missed time. He is the best goal scorer other than Tyler Seguin from that draft in that period. Like, that's why I don't get why people are souring on him.
And one team I thought for sure would be on Skinner would be Montreal. So I talked to you because I said that to me, that's a team that should do it. Like, that's a team that they really need us. They need scorers. They need established scorers that go in, and they are not interested in them.
I don't think Montreal is trading any assets for a forward unless he plays center.
Right.
It makes no sense for them to trade. You know, in a deal for Pacioretty, they're probably looking for futures. If they're trading young assets to get it forward, it's got to be a center. It has to be.
It feels like Skinner will end up on the Devils. To me, that's where that's a team, and I don't know. It just
Los Angeles has been mentioned a lot.
LA's also looking at Kovalchuk, and and the rumors
that defeats the purpose of them getting younger and quicker.
Yeah, but LA's another team that likes to talk about rebuilding, but doesn't really rebuild.
Yeah, they're retooling,
and they should retool. I mean, they're still a pretty good team. They but I don't know. They still have Jonathan Quick. It's still Jonathan Quick as long as they have Jonathan Quick, not the receiver, Mike Quick. Yes. So I don't know. I think that when you look at it, that there's some really interesting possible moves there with Skinner. And yeah, I think you're right, Russ. I mean, he should have value. He is a winger, and he's a solid winger. I don't know why Carol. To me,
I'll give you.
Unless you trade the Skinner for Pacioretty, I don't know why either team would consider it.
Yeah,
There's one thought on this. Okay, sometimes in the past, Waddell, when he was in Atlanta, would throw names out there that were available to get teams to call him and talk to him.
Like Alexei Zhitnik?
Yes, like Alexei Zhitnik.
Like Marian Hossa.
For a while, Hossa. Even Kovalchuk.
Yep. Danny Heatley.
Yep. So what happened? And some GMs, because they feel like they have some players that no one knows about. Like, so say you're sitting there and you're like, Hannafin or so-and-so, and people know about Hannafin. But if there's players on his team that he wants to get rid of that he thinks that people just aren't paying attention to, you have him call you about Skinner and you say, too much, but we really should check out so-and-so, and that player, okay, the team says, okay, yeah, we'll send us some film on him and stuff like that. Skinner feels to me like a herring, this is
let me extol the virtues of Class Dalbeck. But
it feels like a bait and switch is what it feels like. So I don't know whether or not, because there really is no reason at all for Carolina to trade him.
Well, there's one reason, if they don't have any interest in re-signing him after this year.
But why wouldn't they? He likes it there. He's been okay there.
I don't know, but I'm just saying
don't score goals. He does score goals.
That's the thing. If that's a consideration, right now I think he's making over 5. If that's the consideration, I'm just looking it up as we're looking, and he's making 5.725 for another year. If he's going to expect to get himself a raise, they may not want to pay him 6.5. That might be what's at work here. This might be like a JVR situation in Toronto where Toronto didn't jump at trading him, but they will because they don't want to re-sign him after
JVR is on a team with multiple goal scorers. You know what I mean? It's like
I agree that perspective, but
all right. So let's put it out on the table. I think what's happening here with Carolina is that Rob Brindamore is asking for players that played like him. And whether that's going to work in this league or not, I don't know. But it just seems like that's what he is going to be looking for.
Right.
And Skinner's too soft?
Skinner's too soft.
Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, that would make some sense, I guess. But I don't.
For him. He's too soft for him. He's not too soft for the league.
Right.
Yeah.
And Skinner makes sense for a team that is a now team, or that is a team that thinks that with a one or two moves they can contend. Like a team like St. Louis that needs wingers, or a team like Calgary. Now Calgary's loaded on defense, so I don't know how they don't have any draft picks, so I don't know if there's a fit there. But teams like that need scoring on the wings, Skinner makes sense.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
Here's the other thing I heard, and that doesn't make sense. And then I'm done with the Canadiens. If you really are trading Pacioretty and you're going to do this alleged sign and trade, nobody wants Pacioretty for 8 years. Not one team on earth.
Right.
I'm not positive about that. I don't know about that one.
Are you kidding me? If there's a team that wants Max Pacioretty for 8 years, they deserve it. That's all I can say. And I like Pacioretty. Don't get me wrong.
It is. I'm not saying it's not crazy, but Florida, like I talked about with him all along, they really went hard for him. They really do want him. They believe he wants to be there, which is another thing that teams do pay attention to.
He will turn into David Backes in during the middle to the late years of that contract. He will.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not doubting that. But at this point, he's still got another good 4 years, left in him.
Right.
I'm 29.
Yeah.
He can still
play a heavy physical game. Let's be real about this. In this league, those guys don't hold up anymore.
But who's to say the sign and trade is an 8-year deal? We think that naturally that's why you would do that, because you can sign an extra year. I get that. But if they're dealing with, some team it's really hard. First of all, it's really hard for them.
If it's not 8 years, then what the hell is the purpose of the sign and trade?
Right, there is no purpose.
No, right. You have him, and you can get more for him. And you can maybe even get more for it. I mean, you remember you're doing a sign and trade to get more for a player. I mean, and can you get more?
You're only doing it because of term. He can negotiate a contract with anybody.
Right. If say Montreal gives Florida permission to talk to Pacioretty's agent, and Florida and they have the surroundings of a deal, you don't have to do the sign and trade. You just trade and then sign afterward.
Right.
Yeah, but not yet, right? I mean, he is still.
They can. Montreal can grant Florida permit. Say they.
Pacioretty still has 2 years left on his contract.
No. He's a free agent after next year.
After next year.
After next year, right? That's what I mean. I'm sorry, next year.
No, there's not 2 years. It's one more year.
I'm looking at 17, 18 still.
Yeah.
We need to get that off there now. That's just
well, we have to wait until the league gives us a salary cap number, then we can do that.
Yeah. So so you can't. I mean, the reason you sign and trade him is because you want to trade him now. This is the same thing with Carlson. You want to give a team the most amount of time they can with him.
Mm-hmm. Carlson's a different story. There definitely would be a team that would take Carlson at an 8-year deal, even if they had to eat a year or two at the end of his career because he's a top defenseman. Somebody would do that. That's a lot different than Pacioretty.
The 8-year thing doesn't really play into it, honestly, because so say you're Montreal and you're talking to Florida and you're saying, okay, we'll get what gets us the most for him if we sign him for 6 years, we sign him for 5 years, we sign him for 8 years. What gets us the biggest return back for you? And then.
If I'm Dale Talon, I'm telling them no, we'll do the re-signing. Right. We're not going to give you more for you to negotiate the extension with Pacioretty because Pacioretty knows I'm going to go to Florida.
We'll just wait you out.
But they don't do that right now. The thing is that they don't. It depends how aggressive Florida wants to be here because.
Dale Talon is not going to be that aggressive where he's not going to wait out a guy for.
And if there are other teams in the market for Pacioretty, and I'm Dale Talon, and they're using that leverage, like, okay, well, we'll trade him to you. Only, I'm like, you know what? Then go ahead and trade him to Arizona or trade him to Dallas. We'll find somebody else to trade for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be leveraged by Marc Bergevin. Don't give me give me a break. I mean, first of all, Bergevin and Talon, I think, have a relationship going back to the Hawks. Bergevin was assistant GM, so I mean, really, I don't think that if it's Florida, I don't think the whole extension, the whole sign and trade aspect really works. I think the sign and trade really only works with one guy in this free agent class, and that's Tavares. And I don't think
Lou's not going to do that.
No, Lou will never do it.
You can't sign and trade this close to a guy.
Right. No, Lou would never do it anyhow.
It has to be. I mean, it has to be a guy who was just you can renegotiate with on July 1st for another. Like
the one thing Lou will do in on the island that they've done anyhow is make sure they don't have a third jersey, and he'll keep that tradition going.
They're going to bring back the New York Giants thing that they had.
No, they're going to bring back the fisherman's friend.
Lou will make sure there's only 2 jerseys, and the Gordon's Fishermen, they didn't wear it like more than one game, right? I think
Russ, the thing they'll do is they'll ban the brass bonanza, even though they never played the brass bonanza.
Right.
No, one of the things I think is going to be interesting though is the Vegas aspect of this free agent class, and there's a lot of talk there about them trading for Erik Karlsson. And when I heard, and I think it was Elliot Friedman in his 31 Thoughts listed the fact that one of the reasons the deal didn't happen at the deadline was that Ottawa was asking for Cody Glass in the deal. I'm like, okay, do you think that George McPhee is high? Because if you do, then okay. It makes no sense for a team that's just starting out, even with the success that they're having, to trade a kid that they drafted, 6th overall? I mean, it's insane.
Here's the funny thing about McPhee. McPhee is not going to worry about what happened this year and try and accelerate what he thought was going to happen 2 years ago and start trading away his key assets. He's not going to do that.
Now, I think there's a better chance of them, because all it costs them is money, them being in on John Carlson and giving him, 7, 8, 9 million.
Yeah.
Right, but you don't have to give up the young assets to get him. And honestly, he's coming off a cup. He's coming. He has no injury concerns that Erik Karlsson has. It makes more sense for Vegas to do that, and he has a history with them because he drafted him. It makes more sense for Vegas to do that than to trade 3 or 4 assets for Erik Karlsson, who may not want to go to Vegas in the first place.
I do want to mention one more developing story. So it turns out, I probably mentioned this once every couple of weeks. Lindy Ruff is still with the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
He's still there. He looks like now that there's a very good chance he'll be on David Quinn's staff. I can't imagine this is David Quinn's doing. I think this is one of those things where it's sort of being advised to him that, hey, Lindy's a good guy. He's got a lot of, veteran presence as far as being a coach in this league. Mm-hmm. He can help mentor you. My problem with the move is he was horrible as a defensive coach. What are you possibly going to use Lindy Ruff in at this point that's going to help you behind the bench? Because I don't believe he can coach anymore in any way, shape, or form. That is my personal belief, and I haven't had anybody on earth talk me out of that yet.
Tough one.
Did somebody on the moon tell you? Or
you gotta be secure. I mean, it definitely is not the kind of thing that you want to do to your head coach. To me, you don't want to put some guys that established in there, especially if your whole point of going with Glass, going with Quinn is to go, in a younger, newer coach direction. Mm-hmm. Why would you tie that down with?
It hasn't been announced yet, but it's starting to get out there, which makes me think it's going to happen. But we'll wait. We'll know if Lindy's not cut loose on July 1st. If he's there July 2nd, he's there.
Right, and what I said to Russ, and I think this is the case, is clearly this is a rebuild situation with the Rangers, and Lindy Ruff is. I mean, he's tied to assistant GM Jim Schoenfeld from their history in Buffalo. I think he's buddy with Glenn Sather. This is a rebuild team, so why fire him? Why not? He's a veteran guy. It's sort of like having Don Zimmer on the bench with the Yankees when Joe Torre was the manager.
But it definitely. I mean, he casts a big net, around him.
Right.
He's not and that's the thing about that. This is the kind of guy you would think in olden days, like maybe 5-10 to 8 years ago or whatever, that Lou Lamoriello would be all over this. Like, this is the guy that Lou would go for, right? That Lou would bring into the island Lindy Ruff. That why not? Because that's like the kind of thing. But Lou's even going. It really looks like going for DJ Smith, and so he's even turning to a younger. That's just the way the NHL is going right now. So some of these older. I mean, look at Vigneault. Vigneault's name has not been mentioned.
No,
at all.
I don't think he's going to be mentioned for anybody. He has a year on his deal, right?
He can sit back and wait, and he's probably going to
sit back and wait too. But I have a feeling when he is off that deal and decides he wants to get back in, he's going to have a hard time.
Yeah, I mean,
harder time than he thinks too, because I think this NHL is definitely heading towards this younger, the next generation thing. They really are, and
Lou has gone young coach before. Brent Sutter, who was, he wasn't young, but he was young enough, and I believe he won a Memorial Cup, and I think didn't he win a World Junior with Canada, Russ? Brent Sutter,
I believe so.
Yeah, so
he did.
Yeah, so that him going to DJ Smith, who won a Memorial Cup with Oshawa, is not out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, but and the funny thing is, there hasn't been an announcement made yet. I'm sure Lou is dotting his I's and crossing his T's, and maybe put in a call to Barry Trotz if Barry Trotz is amenable. But I don't know. I still think that either Trotz stays in Washington or maybe goes to Minnesota or takes a year off or whatever. That's sort of in flux, but yeah.
Could Vigneault end up with the Capitals? That's
no. If Trotz is not the head coach, it's going to be Todd Reardon. I would be shocked if it wasn't Todd Reardon.
I told you, though, there's a conspiracy theorist in me. If you go by the comments lately, like basically McClellan has said, hey, Trotz, there's a job for you if you want it. And someone asked Trotz, does he feel like he has a future with the Capitals? And he said, absolutely. So that makes me think he might just want to step away from coaching and do something else and stay with the Capitals. And I'm telling you, that is a real possibility, it seems.
So what is he going to be, assistant general manager?
He can be anything he wants, Mike.
Talking to people who really know, and this is not from Barry Trotz, because I would not go for Barry Trotz during the Stanley Cup Finals and ask him what the hell's going on with his coaching job. But I talk to people around there and who know him pretty well, and there are big issues with him and McClellan. That they do not see eye to eye on a lot of things. And I think that is why we haven't. They're saying all the right things. They just won the Stanley Cup, so they're going to say all these great things. But I just think at the end of the day that he's gone.
Hey, Ted, I want to be team president. Okay, Barry. Well, what's your first move? Firing Brian McClellan, and then he appoints himself head coach. That's what I'm saying. I can't see him taking another role in the organization when there's clearly a problem between him and McClellan. So, it's either him.
He still loves the coach. You can tell he loves the coach. He's so anything's possible, but I think that I think we're more likely to see him
now on the Leaf page. I like I said, I think their two target areas are a third line center to replace Tyler Bozak, because Bozak is clearly not going back to Toronto, and obviously the upgrade on the defense. The defense we've talked about for a while. I have a little bit of a feeling a guy like Max Domi might be on their radar as a possible third line center.
Yeah, I really do like him.
Yeah, depending on how much it costs to get him. Now he's an RFA and he's not arbitration eligible. I don't believe. I think it's just, I don't know if it's at the end of his ELC. I'm not sure, but if he is arbitration eligible, he didn't have a great year or so. That might be a fit because he wouldn't cost a ton.
Well, it depends what you think. Like, people say he didn't have a great year, and I think, what do you have, 45 points, right?
Something like that, yeah.
I think that's what he is. I don't think he's going to be more than that. I never have.
Yeah. Well, some people thought he was a top six, but
guy.
Yeah. So if he is a third line center, as they would be what they're looking for, then 45 points is what you're looking for out of a third line center, and he is.
Somebody over the weekend who said that Marleau is making a push for Thornton still. That's still out there, and that's still. And I didn't think it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the thing is that everything that came out now, the question is, Thornton has put the ball in San Jose's court. He says, "I will take less. I want to stay." Blah blah blah. If San Jose is clearly interested in just moving on and they're going to make a run at Tavares, and they don't want Thornton anymore, then I think the natural fallback for Thornton is Toronto, because he'd have to agree probably to a lesser role, because the number one is obviously Matthews and the number two is probably Kadri, although Thornton could be more of an offensive guy. The concern from the Leafs is that Thornton has had major knee surgery on one knee and now the other in 2 consecutive years, so you can't be spending a ton of money on a guy, even though you have a lot of cap space. You can't spend a ton of money on a guy who you're not sure is going to play half the season.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I think there's more concern, because I think that Thornton's just not good enough defensively to be a 2 or a 3 in my mind. Like that's where you're really going to run into issues. Like I think,
but he provides a matchup problem, Mac. That's the thing. It's with his size, with his offensive ability, he can still at a third line center provide a matchup problem for teams, because he'll be playing against other teams' third line centers.
Yeah, but you're talking about a team that is problem defense, has defensive issues.
Well, their defensive problems have to be solved by getting some defense, by getting a couple defensemen.
So they're going to have to get some defense, but at the same time, you've got if your third line center is like
Tyler Bozak was not Doug Jarvis. That's the thing.
Right. Like go back Stratomatic, Mike. Thornton's a 4-1, like he's a 4-1 straight up, and
right, and Bozak is a 2. He's probably, that's what I'm saying. It's like, but Bozak is a good face-off guy. He's not overly big. He's good on special teams, power play, good on shootouts. But defensively, he was not an above average defensive center. Thornton is an all offensive guy, but there's not much difference there. Not much.
No, I think there is.
No, I don't think the drop-off would be huge. I have to agree with Mike, except for on face-offs. That's where the drop-off would be.
I think Bozak's a tougher nose guy, too, though. I think that's
well, he is, but, I mean, here's the thing.
It matters on the second and third lines, like against certain teams.
All right, so, Eck, you're the GM. Would you give Tyler Bozak a 5-year contract?
No, of course not. No, but I'm just saying.
Well,
but I'm going
to ask for 5 years, though.
But here's the sorry.
I'm saying Max Domi makes more sense than Thornton, but that I've heard Thornton's name being mentioned, that Marleau is definitely trying to win.
But here is the thing that makes the most sense in a Thornton scenario. The Leafs have $22 million in cap space for next year, period. After which the Marner and the Matthews extensions, whenever they get signed, kick in. So they have a 1-year window of big money. Thornton is a 1-year contract. They would not sign him for anything more than that. If they do, I think they're nuts. I think any team would be nuts to do that.
Yeah, so, I agree. That's all the time we have for today, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow. More rumor talk from here on out for sure. It's all we'll be talking about. That's that is the game at hand now as we get into these final couple weeks here. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll be back with a blog later this afternoon.